So welcome to Against the Stream, those of you in-house and those of you online, those of you on the Zoom class, thanks for showing up. My name is Jason Murphy and I'm a teacher here at Against the Stream. So anyone, so there's a few people new, right? Is it for your first time here as well?
It's my first time.
First time here? Yeah, well, welcome.
Thank you.
And your first time as well?
Yes.
Yeah, welcome. What about meditation, like meditation practice? You guys done a little bit, some?
I've done one.
Okay, cool, great. So I'll give a little bit of instruction today, and then these other folks they've been around for a while. This is old hat for some of you. So what about at home? Just maybe raise your hand if you're new. All right, welcome. Welcome. Couple newbies, or at least new to this group. Great, glad you popped in. So we're gonna meditate for a bit, and then I'm gonna talk about some things, and hopefully that it will all make sense. And if it doesn't make sense, just keep coming back or go to someone else's group because maybe they'll make more sense than me. No, I'm just playing. Except for, it's true. It's good to see the other teachers, the other styles. We all have a different style. And those of you who are in-house, there's Monday and Wednesday here. And then, Tuesday and Thursday and Friday and Sunday, there's online classes, so you can always check out online if you're not here local, and you can just go to the Against the Stream website and look up the Zoom classes. So yeah, glad you guys are here. And those of you online are here, and yeah, let's go ahead and we're going to meditate for a bit. And so just a few things about meditation for those of you who are new. There's no more spiritual way to sit than another way. There's no, what we really try to, there's no kind of wrong way to try. I'm going to talk tonight about some of the kind of, even some of the meditative kind of practices, because meditation is a huge part of what we call Buddhism or Buddhist practice, but it's not all that there is, right? There's a lot more. And so we'll talk a little bit about some of the ways to have access to that. So just showing up and bringing an open mind and an open heart is good enough, right? So there's no need to get it perfect. There's no need to think about freeing your mind from thinking. That's actually a huge misconception about Buddhism in general and meditation. We're not trying to clear our minds. Instead, we're trying to be with what is happening in our experience, pleasant, unpleasant, or neither, and perhaps quieting some of the disruption or the obstruction. So just to say that much. Yeah, so finding a way where you can sit, where you can feel relaxed and alert. It's good to have a little, a sense of kind of attentiveness. And we're not just necessarily kind of sitting on the lazy boy chair, although if you're at home and you're in a lazy boy, no guilt. I'm not trying to guilt you. It's fine. You can totally wake up sitting on a lazy boy chair. It's just a little bit more difficult. So you want to see if you can kind of rise your head up towards the sky, allowing the spine to be both straight but not rigid. It's helpful to allow the eyes to close, although it's not necessary. Like some people don't feel comfortable with their eyes closed, and it's totally fine to just allow your eyes to be kind of downcast. Yeah, whatever works for you. All right, so we're going to kind of settle in for about 30 minutes of meditation. So in some ways, just kind of arriving here, arriving with this intention to practice, this intention to meditate, this intention to, show up. Show up for yourself. Show up for the group. So finding some way to arrive here. This breath, this sitting, breathing body. Opening up to the comings and goings of sound. And so for the first little while, really this idea of collecting attention, seeing if you can pick a point where you can connect with the breath, this experience of breathing, either the tip of the nose or the rise and fall of the belly, perhaps the expansion and contraction of the chest, wherever you can most easily make contact. And then see if you can rest your attention there. Now, of course, the attention may wander off. It's totally expected. Doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. The mind wanders. It's in that moment that we can recognize when the attention has wandered off, and we infuse some kindness, some compassion for the mind, for its tendencies, for its habits, and then just aim the attention back again with that sense of friendliness. Aim, connect, sustain. Sometimes it's helpful to even do a few things like you can count with the breath. So breathing in, 1, breathing out, 2, just kind of following the breath with a gentle noting of counting in the mind. Seeing if you can get to 10 without the attention wandering off. There's no need to go beyond 10. It's a practice of concentrating the mind. And if you recognize that the attention has wandered off, it's not a problem, just noting where it's gone and then returning back to one, breathing in, one, breathing out, two, and so on. Relaxed, attentive, just again and again, recognizing if the attention wanders off, using that as an opportunity to recommit to this present time experience. There's no need to do anything. There's no need to think anything. Just be. Be here, this breath, this moment, arising, staying for a time, and passing away. again and again. If the counting is working for you, please continue. And if you feel you would benefit from dropping the counting and just being, with the breath, with the awareness of present time experience unfolding. Be with that. Relax, observe, allow. Each breath, each moment. Anytime we recognize some tension or some grasping, just relax, release, let go, be here, softening into each exhale. Breathing in. Know that you're breathing in. Breathing out. Know that you're breathing out. All right. So I feel like it's probably just useful to take a moment or two and just kind of reflect on what was that last 30 minutes like for you. And just kind of silently reflect. What was noticed? Was there any tendencies? Was there any attitudes? Not so much the content of the thoughts, although that can be useful. Really, I think to take the broader view of just kind of like, what was that experience like? Pleasant, unpleasant, neither? Was there certain habits, repetitiveness? Just acknowledging it without judgment, without criticism. Perhaps we'll open up for some discussion later. So thinking about a topic I kind of moved into last week, I thought I would loop back around and give a little bit more context to, a little bit more depth. And one of the things I think to think about is that there's lots of groups of teachings within Buddhism. And one of the ways that I kind of view it is that it kind of starts with, the Four Noble Truths. And I think about those kind of Russian dolls. Maybe they're also found in Mexico too, but I think that they're primarily Russian, and where you there's one big doll and then you take it off and then there's two, and and you just kind of keep opening it, and then it gets smaller and smaller and smaller until you have, however many, 37 little Russian dolls, each with, containing smaller bits of kind of information or understanding. And I kind of view the Dharma as that there is this, the word Dharma meaning teaching or truth, often thought about as the meaning of nature, truth in nature, truth found in nature. The lineage that we practice here at Against the Stream is the Thai forest lineage. So meaning in northeastern Thailand, there's a little bit of forest left. And the groups of monks that we have been studying with, Noah and myself and others along this kind of path, have been studying this particular kind of, oh, thank you. Thanks, I appreciate that. This particular kind of teaching, Ajahn Chah, the teaching of Ajahn Chah, and Ajahn Mun. And Ajahn means teacher or master, like master of teaching. And then, and so on and so forth, kind of down. So anyway, these groups of forest teachings, and often there's another teacher that I studied with, not him directly because he died in like 86, which is before I even really thought about practicing meditation. I started about 94. But anyway, his name is Buddhadasa Bhikkhu, and he has a monastery in the southern part of Thailand. And he was the type of rebellious monk that he didn't believe in any kind of religiosity at all. He actually wrote a book called No Religion, which is amazing, just little probably 30 pages or something like that of just deep wisdom. Buddhadasa Bhikkhu. So there was this kind of southern forest and this northeastern forest tradition in Thailand. Other teachers in elsewhere, all the way back to the time of the Buddha, this idea of Dharma, meaning truth in nature, really in essence meaning like you can sit and observe nature. And that includes the nature of the mind, the nature of the heart, because there's actually not much difference. And all of the wisdom of the Dharma will be revealed. And I've always loved that about this particular practice. And so Buddhadasa Bhikkhu in the what's it called? Swan Mok. The monastery is called Swan Mok, which is in the south of Thailand where I went and studied. And Swan Mok means Garden of Liberation. And what I loved about this place is that it was, well, one, they had hot springs, which was kind of awesome, especially when you're just sitting on cement floors for days and days and days and days. But two is that it was just open space and nature. And there was no like Buddha statues, and there was no kind of iconography. And Buddhadasa Bhikkhu was basically like observe the mind and observe nature, and all will be revealed. And to me, that was like, all right, I can do that. And then, of course, it's challenging, but at least there wasn't any dogmatic bullshit that I had to like wave through or do mental gymnastics around. And that, to me, in my interpretation and my kind of understanding of Buddhism, has been really useful. And it's kind of what we, prescribe here a bit. Or what I guess what we subscribe to, which is, this kind of, it's not watered down, it's just not added on. There's not a lot of cultural overlay, which in some of the Buddhist traditions, you have a lot of cultural overlay. Tibetan tradition, cultural overlay. Zen tradition, cultural overlay. Some forms, even, and totally even Thai tradition, but this forest monastic lineage that I just kind of had the good grace of falling into. Not a lot of that. And if you read anything from Ajahn Chah, like this book, the Food for the Heart, or the class that Noah's going to be doing here in a month or so, following the teachings of Ajahn Amaro, who was another monk in the lineage, and Noah's primary teacher. You'll see very clearly that there's it's like no nonsense, So all that to say, what I'd like to focus on today is what some would call the kind of prerequisite to liberation. And there's lots of different ways of unpacking the Russian dolls of teachings. But the first three basic principles, it's called Dana, Sila, Bhavana. Dana, generosity, giving. Sila, ethics, ethical integrity. What I often say, not being an asshole. And then Bhavana. Bhavana means like techniques, means it means meditative techniques, which I'll break down a little bit more. So I want to focus on those three aspects because a lot of times people they'll want to learn how to meditate, and I did this too. Like I just didn't even really want to learn. I was kind of a little bit forced and a little bit thanks for this tea, I appreciate it. I wasn't expecting tea and I got tea. So anyway, this kind of, I started meditating and I didn't really know where it was going to take me, nor did I know what I was really even doing. But there was some inkling, there was some like, they call it a mustard seed of faith or hope or confidence, trust, that this would lead to somewhere good, somewhere better than I was, which was on a one-way path to prison, which is pretty much where I was headed when I started to learn to meditate. 16 years old, I was court ordered to a psychologist who happened to be a Hindu yogic practitioner. And that coupled with some other, kind of other like little bits of meditative moments, I got kind of turned on to the idea of meditation in a very check it, like DIY, check it out for yourself kind of way. And that stuck. And then it wasn't till, 15 years later that I discovered, oh, there's like this whole ethical integrity bag, that goes with it. And that there's this whole kind of acting in a generous way and in a kind way. And of course, these, kind of seem like some of the golden rules. But really, if we look at the world, what is predominant? Is it generosity and kindness, or is it greed and hatred? So this is why, this center is called against the stream. This is why the Buddha called this practice against the stream. And so that practicing, ethical integrity, or sometimes it's called the precepts, right? Or this kind of way of walking in the world of non-harming. And generosity, or what's called dana in Pali, which is the language that the teachings were written down in probably about 250, 300 years after the Buddha died. So this was largely a oral tradition, which is passed down from teacher to student in that way for a long time. So dana. So what is generosity? So there's just a few notes that I've kind of made. So giving inclines the mind towards freedom from attachment. So if we think about what is generosity, generosity is the direct antidote to greed or miserliness or selfishness, right? That all of these things cause layers and layers of agitation in our minds. And that there's the attachment, which, those of you who've heard at least one or two Dharma talks, you've heard that attachment is the cause of suffering, right? Craving and attachment is the cause of suffering. And so giving alone inclines the mind towards kind of this non-attachment or freedom from kind of that clinging, that holding on to, that this is mine. And so there's some really great ways that we can just begin to kind of pay attention to generosity. So giving for the sake of giving. So not because you have to, not because it's Christmas, not because there's an obligation, just because. Just because. And then giving with like an open heart, even if it's like the other day, this person, this homeless person was asking me if I had any spare change. Or I don't exactly know what they were saying, but it was basically that they were asking for, and in that moment, and this isn't me every moment, but in that moment, I was like, yeah, I got $1. And I just gave, and I didn't care what he was going to do with it. And I didn't care, like, buy crack, get a burrito, like whatever you're going to do with it is what you're going to do with it. But the act of giving, it wasn't my responsibility to be curious. And there has been times where I've been like, well, are you going to buy a bottle with that? And if they're like, yeah, then I was like, sometimes I'd be like, well, maybe I can't contribute to that. But in this moment, there was just like an open-hearted, like, yes, I can. And that's just a tiny little thing. But it inclines the heart towards kind of softening, for me anyway. You have to see for yourself. So this kind of giving with an open heart without any expectation of what's going to happen after the giving occurs. And then this other piece, which has been hard for me and I've been working with actually kind of this year, giving to self, being generous to ourselves. I think in this culture, there's so much emphasis on kind of external giving and sometimes there's giving with an open heart or an open hand. And sometimes there's like what they call one-handed giving, which is where there's the generosity, but the generosity there's a bit of a holding or an expectation of receiving back. I think Christmas is like this, like me and I don't think it was my sister's choice, but we stopped buying each other gifts years ago. And for me, it was like, or actually, this is what really happened, is that I was like, I don't want anything. I don't need anything. I kind of started doing this kind of a little bit of like generosity rejecting. And then she got a little bit mad about it. But then I would buy her gifts and this like give them, like not just her, but my other family. And because I liked the way it felt to give, but I didn't really want to receive because I didn't want to burden anyone else. There was just I had some trip about it. I wasn't honoring my own need for generosity, and I was denying my sister and some other members of my family the opportunity to give, the opportunity to feel what it feels like to be generous. So we've modified that a bit, but it's just like nothing big. There's no expectation that there has to be something given. But then this idea of kind of being generous to ourselves. So then there's the paying attention to the giving. So like this cup of tea that I received, which was an act of generosity, not one that was expected, taking a moment to just like receive it, which I tried to do. And then enjoying it. So it was a great teaching moment. Thank you for, just the random act of generosity. So yeah, and then how does it feel to receive the benefits of generosity in the here and now? Like that's also like when I gave that guy $1, I didn't think a lot about it, to be honest. Like I wasn't like, oh, like I'm so generous. Like I gave this guy $1, and he's going to go buy a beer with it or, whatever. Like I just was like, it felt good. I gave it. I saw him receive it. He had there was a glimpse of appreciation. I also really try to look people in the eye during those kind of exchanges. Even if I'm not going to be generous, like even if I'm not going to give money in that sense, I really also just try to look people right in the eye, like I see you. I think that can be an act of generosity as well. So paying attention to the giving, the kind of how it feels. So I've had the pleasure of going on several kind of meditation retreats, long-term meditation retreats at centers that cost thousands and thousands of dollars, and this is, some of these were 10 years ago, and I was in school, or I was in between, my bachelor's degree, which I was already in debt, and then my master's degree, which put me more in debt. So I didn't have a lot of money, right? But I wanted to deepen, and as I started to train as a meditation teacher, it wasn't only required, because it is required to sit longer meditation retreats to really understand what the hell this is all about, but also I just had a real desire to want to do that. But yet I couldn't afford, like $8,000 for 2 months of meditation retreat, right? And so some of the Sangha, the community that I was a part of in Northern California when I was training as a Dharma teacher, supported me, sent me on a meditation retreat, that was quite expensive, that I would not have been able to afford. And what I remember is being overwhelmed by the generosity of the Sangha, of the community, supporting not only my practice, but also me as a teacher, the center, and, just kind of the ripple effect of what that is like. And then also being on the meditation retreat, which is it was a 2-month meditation retreat. So after the first month, I kind of wanted to go. Like I was kind of done, you know what I mean? Like I was like, all right, 6 weeks, we're good. And what came back to me is that this group had supported me, lifted me up to be able to go. And that they supported me without even knowing it to finish that meditation retreat, to dive down a little bit deeper. And I'm really grateful for that. And that was a way in which generosity has, personally kind of affected me. And it's also why when there's a donor for the retreats, the weekend retreats, the classes that we have, why we offer scholarships. Because it's two-sided, right? There's the person that gives, and there's the person that receives the gift. And so there's some practical ways to just practice that for yourself and find, so that's my support, my encouragement is to find ways, and this is the encouragement of the Buddha, to find ways to be generous, in even if it's in tiny ways like I was talking about, even if it's like letting someone move in when you're driving and they want to get into your lane in front of you. And how sometimes in LA, like that is like a war, like that's like a fight, and I've been guilty of it. But like an act of generosity is just to slow down and create the space, like, and then feel what that feels like. Feel what it feels like to not honk the horn, to not have the person flip you off, to not have that whole exchange that could be, right? Yeah. Anyway, that's kind of a thought. Let's see, generosity. So I had a few more examples of generosity that I've experienced in my life that I wanted to just kind of illuminate. One is when I was at this monastery in northeastern Thailand called Wat Pananacha. It's which basically means like the kind of Westerners monastery. It was a monastery that was created by Ajahn Chah, and that was just for foreigners, like so that people from all over the world that spoke many different languages but were primarily Western could have their own kind of a place. That Ajahn Chah found that was necessary. And so, and even though it's in a place where no one in the community really speaks English, so you pretty much have to learn Thai if you're going to stay there, which is a good thing. But anyway, so I was there and I was contemplating ordaining there. I had stayed there for about a month, a few weeks in just a few weeks in kind of like retreat clothes. And then I had transitioned into what they call a pikau, which is like making a commitment to ordain. And I had to like shave my eyebrows and do this whole thing. But one of the things that I would do is I would go on alms rounds at like 5 a.m. with the monks, right? The monks would walk out into the community just with simple robes and a bowl, and the community would feed them. And that's how we ate every day. And if there was no one to give, then we wouldn't eat. Which is not totally true, because there was a little bit of, there would be like, there's like always going to be some rice, you know, but it is possible in the monastic world to go a day or two without eating. Because the commitment within Buddhism is to be solely dependent on those who, or, you know, to be dependent on others for your sustainability. This center is dependent completely on those who attend or those who are online. So this idea of kind of generosity is really, this is the way that we carry it on as non-monastics. That's why we don't charge money. That's why anyone that wants to can attend. There's no requirement. And if it disappears because it doesn't get funded, then it disappears, and we'll just have to work with that. That's another aspect, right, of the teaching. So anyway, so I was on alms rounds, and I was just really struck with like seeing grandmothers who had gotten up at 3:30, 4:30 in the morning to make a meal, and then their whole family kind of in line, from like grandmother to, you know, to parents, to then the kind of small children to like tiny children, all participating in the giving. And just really observing that, and then also then later feeling sustained by the food that was given. It just was beautiful. It was a beautiful experience. So then, well, I'm going to move on. There's more. I have more stories like that, but I'm not going to. I don't want to get too much into it because it'll be another 20 minutes. I'll talk about it another time. All right, I'll just tell one more story because I really love this story, and it totally moved me. So I was in Bodh Gaya, India. So Bodh Gaya, India is the birthplace of Buddhism. It's where the Buddha awakened sitting under the Bodhi tree, right? It's one of the most kind of depicted, you know, images of the Buddha sitting under the tree of enlightenment, the tree of awakening. And around the temple where the tree is, which is the kind of great granddaughter of the original tree, is all of these different monasteries, all these different meditation schools from all over the world. So every aspect of meditation of Buddhism is kind of, you know, represented. And you know, there's some really, you know, highfalutin kind of gold templed ones, and some really kind of austere looking Zen ones. And, you know, and one of the things I would do every night is I would go to a different temple at 6 o'clock where they have their chanting or their practice every evening. And I would go to a different one and just experience what that's like to do a different practice, chanting or bowing or beating a drum, or, you know, there was always some kind of singing, or, you know, there's every different tradition had slightly different practices. And I came across one day, I don't know exactly how it happened, but I was just walking back from the temple to this place I was staying, which is like it was a meditation center, but it was like a hostel. And I just caught the eye of this very dark-skinned, kind of tattered robed, like young, like maybe 15 or something, monk. And he just had this beaming smile from like afar, like a distance. And I just was like drawn to him. So I just walked up, and then him and his other, and I think they were like really looking at me because I like I'm covered in tattoos, and I looked different than most of the people maybe that were there. I don't exactly know. But come to find out that they were part of this very small monastery that was kind of like it was like a squat house, kind of. It was kind of like an abandoned house. Like, that's what it looked like. That's what it felt like. It wasn't very decorative. So I was drawn to them, and I come to find out that they were from Bangladesh. And, Bangladesh is a very poor country. And there's a lot of turmoil and a lot of kind of separation even today. And anyway, they invited me back to their monastery, and they look kind of were like wayward. They looked like kind of like they're like street kids. They're like street kid monks, which is why I was probably drawn to them. And anyway, they offered me tea and biscuits, and we talked for a little bit. And I kind of tried to help them with English, and they, we were kind of had this broken conversation, but it was very heartfelt. So then I left, and I just did, I did the practice with them, and they were all very excited that people were visiting their little monastery that was like a broken down hostel or something. And anyway, then the next day, I just was overwhelmed to just go buy a bunch of stuff for him. Like I had money, not a lot of money, but I had money. And I just got really into like buying toothbrushes and biscuits and sponges and like whatever the hell I thought that they would need, And then I went back and I did an offering that evening. And they were so like, it wasn't like a ton of stuff. Like I didn't like buy them a new house, you know what I mean? But it was the feeling that I had in the generosity of just being just lighthearted and open. And there were only like 6 or 8, and the oldest monk, the like kind of what was he like I guess he was the abbot of this monastery, was like maybe 30, like, so I was probably older than him at the time. I think I was like 38 and or 40. And anyway, the point being that they like wanted to make a really big deal about it and like really pay attention to the merit, the karma gained, right? That's what they kept saying. Oh, this is good karma. This is good merit. Like this is goodness. You're participating in dana, which is heart opening and freedom. And I didn't fully understand even at the time. And they were like taking pictures, and they were all like, around all the stuff, and it was just a big deal. And then I left, and but here it is. I don't even know how many years later, and I still get kind of emotional when I think about it, because it was such a clean giving and such a clean receiving for me. So anyway, so that's probably enough about dana or about generosity for now. So the next kind of aspect in this group of teaching is called sila. And sila kind of means ethical living, like living through an ethical lens. And so just to kind of think about, like, what does that mean? Well, it means non-harming at its root. There's this word ahimsa, and ahimsa means basically non-harming, like to harm no being. And so non-harming as a protection, one of the views of this ethical integrity is to utilize non-harming as a protection for ourselves. Because the act, just like the act of generosity can lighten the heart and freeze attachment, the act of harm causes restriction and causes suffering in the mind. And, I'm pretty sure that we've all done some harm. I know that I have. I've done a lot of harm to myself, to others, sometimes totally unintentionally. Like not even having any understanding that I was causing harm to another, it still happened, And there's a little bit of like this ideal, I think, that this philosophical ideal of when we say ahimsa or non-harming, then that there's going to be like some attainable or achievable, like, not harm anything ever, right? So there's one sect of spiritual kind of Dharma, I guess you could say, that really took this to heart. They were called the Jains. The Jains died out. And the reason why is because like they were so like they realized eating vegetables and farming killed worms and killed the little bugs that eat the vegetables. So they stopped eating. You know what I mean? Creating clothing, there was some harm involved in the process of creating clothing, so they didn't wear clothes. So they walked around naked, and they didn't really eat. And it's a little bit, it sounds a little bit like a joke, but it's actually not. And you know, they would just really use it as a practice. So the Buddhist perspective, there's actually two different views of ethical integrity. One is that of the monastics, so monks and nuns that have chose to take on the robes, right? So for monks, they take on 227 principles, precepts, guides, right? Rules, if you will. And it's called the Vinaya, 227. So the women that chose to ordain, and even in the resurgence of, because there was several centuries where women weren't allowed, they were oppressed by the patriarchal, hierarchical, monastic society. And there's been a resurgence, which I'm proud to say is actually part of our lineage, is Ajahn Brahm, who is in Australia, began to ordain some of the first women, Western women, and that started this whole new resurgence of female monastics. So, which is super encouraging. And there's some nunneries and some bhikkhuni monasteries up north that I'm personal friends with many monastics, female monastics, and have taught with some of them. So the females the women decided to take on 331 precepts, where men, there was only 227 required. And so they took those 227 on, but because they're so hardcore, like they decided to add a few more because that's what's felt appropriate to them for whatever reason, the female monastics, the bhikkhunis. So they have a 331 guidelines. So that is what's evolved in the monastic community around precepts. And there, again, it's protecting ourselves. So what the Buddha gave to us is 5 as non-monastics, and said, these are guidelines, choose to live them, and you will suffer less, you know. So dana, act in generous ways, receiving and giving, live in some simple principles that are under the guidelines of ahimsa, non-harming. So let's just look at them for a minute. So this is kind of a taking refuge, right? Setting a clear intention to not cause harm. And it's something that evolves. And it's not a commandment, and it doesn't mean that you're not Buddhist if you don't do it, and it doesn't mean that you're Buddhist if you do. It just means if you want to suffer less, these are some guidelines of how you might do that. 1, protect life. Just don't kill. And there's, you know, different debates about what that actually means. But what we're talking about is setting a clear intention, and it's different for different people. Skillful action. So just to kind of say, these standards, the precepts are simple. There's no intentional killing. Don't steal. Don't take what's not offered. What's not freely offered, right? Like things that are here, like biscuits and the tea and things they're freely offered. Our center is freely offered. That picture, not freely offered, right? So don't steal it. Being wise. Well, one of the other things is having harmful or sexual intentions or actions. So being harmful with sexual intentions or actions is a precept that we try to hold, which is to not be harmful in that way, to not cause harm in that way. So not cause harm to ourselves or others by stealing, to not cause harm to ourselves or others by being wise with our sexuality, intentions, and actions, to have wise speech. In other words, to not openly slander others, to not talk shit, basically, spread gossip. Tough. That's a tough one. One of my teachers took on this practice once of not talking about any person that wasn't in their that they weren't having a conversation with, or that they couldn't see, that they weren't that wasn't in a group. You know what I mean? So never to say, so I heard Noah talk about the other day, because Noah's not in the room. So I wouldn't talk about that person. That was a practice that this one teacher took on for a year. That's intense. I suggest it. Or just to find some way of working with wise speech. How often do we cause harm, or do we receive harm through, just look at Facebook for 5 minutes, right? Just post something on Facebook that might be controversial, and see all of the negative or the accusatory or sometimes I do that just for fun, just to kind of see, I'll put some outlandish thing just to kind of see who is just kind of gonna start picking for no apparent reason, and then often I separate myself from that person. So now you know. But just to practice being wise with speech in some way. And then the last of these 5 suggested ways to end or lessen your own suffering is to not take intoxicants. To be wise or careful with intoxicants. And for some people, that means 0. People like me that used to smoke crack behind dumpsters, probably not a good idea for me to, think I can teetotal and kind of drink every now and again, because I can't. Because I've become clear that it clouds the mind. People have different approaches with this. But the Buddha was clear that taking substances or intoxicating the mind as a form of delusion just causes more confusion and suffering. And so, good suggestion not to do it. The Buddha also highly suggested to just be celibate, and then you don't have to deal with any of the wise sexuality stuff. But we're not monastics, and we have to figure out, actually it's more difficult for us that are engaging in the world, engaging with work, engaging with social media, engaging with relationships, engaging, how do we navigate that? And so the principles of sila, of the precepts, give us, some orientation to kind of push up against or to reflect on. All right, so I'm going to stop there for now, because that was a lot, and I'll carry this on next week. But I want to open up for questions or reflections, either in the. Let's do that. Either in the online or in the room if you have any kind of questions or things that you're wondering about that I said so far. Or if you, in the Zoom, if you want to raise your little blue hand. Did anything seem unclear or anything more I can kind of unpack a little bit based on generosity, dana, and sila, ethical integrity?
What are some of the 330?
331 Bhikkhuni. I don't really know the difference between some of the Bhikkhuni ones, but so there's some strange ones, you know, like, well, one of them is that monastic cannot be alone. It's a little bit heteronormative, but cannot be alone in a room with the opposite sex. So as a male monastic cannot be alone with a female, monastic or not, and vice versa. Totally heteronormative, right? I mean, that assumes that people are going to only be, which is totally not true. Specifically, there's some interesting things that happen in monasteries that I have, seen.
You're not going to throw that sentence out and not follow it up, are you?
I am actually. That's all I'm going to say about it. But that's one of the rules. Like monks can't own or hold on to kind of more than what they can fit kind of in their arms, because they're supposed to have no possessions. So oftentimes, like especially a traveling monk, it will have like a backpack and like a satchel, and that's it. They can't hold anything more than, I think there's like a weight amount. And then there's some weird ones like can't own or can't hold like 3 yards of yarn for longer than 3 days, or there's something like that. Like there's some because it has to do with kind of covetousness and kind of possession. There's also like not listening to music, not playing music, not distracting oneself, not sleeping in a high or luxurious bed, not eating more than once a day.
There are a lot of places you don't eat past noon.
Yeah, quite a few. So there's many. Those are just some of them. I was a monk for a short time in Burma, and
The yarn thing got you.
the yarn thing got me.
You just couldn't not hold
I just
on to the
couldn't
yarn.
not. It's true. I was like, I wanted to sew a button, like I just really did. No, I actually contemplated staying, but this was in Burma, and they actually, it was a temporary ordination, and then I wanted to stay on, and they actually kind of said, like, because I have the Buddha tattoos, I have tattoos of Buddhas, and they like arrest people, just tourists for having Buddha tattoos in Burma. And they were like, yeah, I don't think that it's gonna, like, you staying a monastic and traveling, you're gonna get arrested. So they encouraged me to leave the country. Yeah. Anyway. So if you got a Buddha neck tattoo, don't go to Burma. You'll get arrested. All right, anyone at home? Hmm?
That was a good question.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it seems pretty, clear cut. The precepts are clear cut, sometimes I just boil them down to just like, don't be a jackass. Like that's kind of my, like, sometimes in my own mind, like I just like try to go navigate my day and not be a jackass. Like if I can get through this day without wanting to punch somebody, or definitely not, like in the early days, it was just don't hit anybody, right? Don't hit anybody. Don't steal anything. I used to hit people. I used to steal things. I used to do tons of drugs, I'm not a saint, right? I've caused harm with my sexuality,
The right speech thing's tough.
Right speech. Yeah, it is tough. Right speech is, and it's a great place to practice, like to not intentionally talk shit about somebody else. Just take that on. So one of the, it's a good point. I'm glad we kind of got there. One of the ways to work with the precepts is to, out of the 5, no intentional killing, no taking that which is not offered, no stealing, no being assaultive with speech, or you being unwise or uncareful with speech, being wise with sexuality, or not taking intoxicants. Out of those 5, take one on for a month. Just take one. I mean, you could take all 5, but get very particular about one, particularly the one that you don't want to take on.
Mm-hmm.
The one that you're like, the no killing thing. Okay, like I get that, but that wise speech, I like to talk some shit, like take that one on. That's the invitation. Of course, you're going to do whatever you want, and I'm not going to judge you for it, right? But I've taken on periods of celibacy. I've taken on, not taking all kinds of intoxicants. And sometimes when we talk about intoxicants, we also mean like I don't know, TV or internet or Facebook. Or I've actually recently been thinking, like, do I really need Facebook? Like, I think I should just get off of Facebook, because it's just so much. It's just so much suffering.
Ask Noah about doing art, because I draw for like 10 hours at a time.
Uh-huh.
And it's definitely mood and mind altering.
Mm.
Well,
it's one of the, it's interesting because it's one, that's actually something that's somewhat allowed within the monasticism, within the monastic world. It's definitely allowed, like it's not, none of this isn't allowed. It's just a matter of like, what do you want to take on, So I would say utilize that as a practice. Is it an intoxication? Is it a checking out? Is it a numbing out? Right. Yeah. I even took on one time, this is a little bit candid and it's going to go on YouTube, but oh wow. I even took on like not only being celibate, but no masturbation, no consumption of any kind of pornographic images. It then got even more challenging. Of course, on meditation retreats, like you're kind of sheltered from all that anyway. That's one of the reasons why it's good to go to a meditation retreat, because you don't get cell phone service. You're removed from all of your comforts, and you're able to guard your senses, as they say. So I suggest doing that. All right. I didn't see any hands.
I have a question.
Okay, we have time for one more question.
Yeah, so can you speak just more about, you spoke a lot about just, wise speech and just not stealing, not killing. Can you give some more examples of like why sexuality would look like?
Uh-huh.
Does that mean like a consensual relationship? Like what kind of things would you take on for that one?
Okay. So I have like a minute. So maybe we'll pick this up next week though. So if you're not here, you can always log in and talk more about it, but I'll give you the quick answer. Okay. The question was about, can I talk more about wise sexuality? And I think I ended with that last week also. So it's somewhat tricky, but also not tricky. Yeah. Like don't, it's like don't intentionally cause harm. That means using sexual energy in a way to exploit another, manipulate another, cause harm to another or self, basically. As a teacher, it's my role to not engage in sexual relations with students, right? Like that's because there's a whether it's perceived or not perceived, there's a power differential there that needs to be understood and respected, which is kind of why like monks and lay women couldn't be alone together. because there might, who knows what was going to happen, and it has happened. Traditionally, like, all the way back in the time of the Buddha, it was very clear, like, don't have sex with children. So to be like non-harming with sex meant for men, it was only for men, because men are sexual deviants, right? And women, totally not at all. They're innocent all the time from the 2,500-year-old perspective, right? And so this idea was that men couldn't have sex with children, other married people, and like people that are under the protection of their family. So it was basically like innocence and or exploitation. And there's been some nuance of that throughout the years. And I think also we're talking about, we want to talk about sex positivity. We want to talk about, promiscuity. We want to talk about, monogamy versus non-monogamy, polyamory, like pansexuality. None of that is actually that's not the issue. The issue is my heart or mind intention to cause harm, not what I say. Because, how many people have said, I didn't mean to, that wasn't my intention to cause you harm. Yet in the back of your mind, there was some intention. Otherwise, maybe you wouldn't have engaged in that situation. Just to think about that. That's the kind of, I think, the kind of involvement we can kind of start to engage with. All right, so we're out of time. It's like 2 minutes over. Thanks for hanging in there. Hopefully that was useful. Yeah. All right, so let's just take all the goodness of this practice, all the merit, all of the generosity, and taking it in that we deserve it. We earned it. Just by being born, you have earned the right to exist, the right to peace and ease. So taking that on. And then extending out in all directions. May any of the goodness of our practice, may this goodness be dedicated to the freedom from suffering for all beings. May we all be free. And there is the againstthestream.com where you can give to this center, or there's bowls, or there's Venmo. We could use your support.